that have had the distinct honor of being a president of DSBA, guys like Bud Lynch back in the 1950s, Bruce Martin in the 1960s, in the 90s. So I think Ken Daniels would be a good president. Don't you think so? Anyway, something to consider, Ken. It's a great organization. But right now, this is our RedWing preview, and we are so fortunate to have Ken and Jim and Chris with our playoff preview. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago that we were doing it, but there's been a lot of changes in the off season, some new faces, and I'm sure they'll be telling us all about that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, Ken Holland. Assistant general manager, Jim Mill. And I'm sorry I don't know the title, but it's an assistant to the assistant entrepreneur. Going to Chelly's bar today before the game, have a couple of beers. Chris Chelly. And again, if you have any questions for our guest here today, start thinking about the questions. I'll start it off asking a few, and then raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you. But first and foremost, thank you guys for coming out today. Ken, I had an opportunity to see the Red Wings play in the preseason. I was very impressed with Gustav Nyquist. He was sent down to Grand Rapids. Was there any thought amongst you and Jimmy and the rest of the staff and Coach Babcock about possibly him making the team this year?
Yeah, there was lots of thought. He obviously, his training camp wore on, he got better and better and better. He's coming out of University of Maine with a tremendous college career under his belt, leading scorer in the nation. I think 2 years ago, finalist for one of the 3 finalists for the Hobey Baker. Last year, not quite as dominant, but still had a real good year. We just at the end felt that other players have to go on the waivers. This is an opportunity for us, I guess, to keep all our assets. Let's get Gus off and running on his pro career. He did play a little bit last year at the end of the year with Grand Rapids, and we'll kind of assess this situation as we go. We're in the process of really, we're trying to get younger. We're trying to transition. There's been an old guard. Chelly's one of the old guard that was so instrumental in the success that we've had for a long time, and long-time Red Wing players. And we're slowly transitioning to another generation of players. At the same time, we're trying to figure out a way to stay competitive with the elite teams. So that's the balancing act that we're going through. So yeah, we did think about the idea of keeping him, starting him on the team, but ultimately felt that the best way to go for now was to assign him to Grand Rapids.
Now there was a signing in Fabian Brunstrom. Your thoughts about his play in the preseason? How can he help you guys out?
Well, he played real good in preseason. I think part of assessing a player is kind of looking at the history, and we pursued him real hard 3 years ago when he was an unrestricted free agent. He was 22 at the time, I think. Was one of the leading scorers in the Swedish Elite League. He was undrafted. Everybody's looking for a free player. He eventually signed with Dallas. He's got 3 years of pro under his belt. He did score 17 goals in the National Hockey League. He's 6'2". He's 26 years of age. We've had some success in giving players an opportunity that didn't pan out elsewhere that have turned out to be pretty good for us. So he's big, he's strong. He had an opportunity to sign a contract in the Swedish Elite League, chose to come here on a tryout, so you kind of add it all up together, and he had a good camp. We think it's a good opportunity to see if we can find a player and develop a player. So he's honored. We signed him to a 2-way contract. We've obviously got Jan Mersak coming off of IR sometime around Christmas, so it gives us some time here to kind of see where Brunstrom's game is at, where Corey Emerton's game is at, where Nyquist's game is at down in the minors. We're trying to develop some young players.
Jim, you have your eye on some of the younger players in Grand Rapids. You're constantly commuting between Detroit and Grand Rapids. Talk a little bit about who's caught your eye, and perhaps maybe some of the players that the fans can look at and say one day they might be Red Wings.
Well, I think somebody that everybody saw in the exhibition games was Brendan Smith, and got off to a little bit of a slow start in the exhibition games. Thought he played very well against Chicago. Fortunately, had that strong hit against Ben Smith, and is now suspended because of that. So he's going to go down to Grand Rapids, continue with kind of growing his game and go from there. But he's a player that's got some high-end capabilities. We talked about Nyquist. He's going to be down in Grand Rapids. We got Thomas Tatar that everybody would have saw up in some exhibition games here. Played some games for us last year. He's only just turning 20 years of age. so he's going to be a good young player. Joaquin Anderson, skating's got to keep coming, but he's getting there, so his game's starting to grow. Some of the other players, Logan Pyatt, thought he had a strong training camp. Last year was not a great year for him, but it's kind of come on strong. So got a pretty good stable of players. Thomas McCullum is our goalie, just turning 21. It's going to be a big year for him. We're looking for big things from him. He adds us lots of depth. We've got Joey McDonald and Jordan Pierce down the minors, and with Thomas McCullum. So that's kind of a list of some of the players down there.
And Chris, you have an opportunity to work with some of the defensemen. What do you look forward to in working with the defensemen? Is there anybody that caught your eye?
Well, a couple of the guys that were in Grand Rapids last year, Doug Janik, Earhart, Logan Pyatt had a pretty strong exhibition camp when he played this year. So it's just a matter of numbers right now. Obviously, Nick is not going to be around forever. Hopefully, for a little while longer. Another couple of years we hope. But there's going to be a couple spots. Stewie's another guy who's a free agent after this year. So it's just a matter of them getting their opportunity. And I think they've proved themselves that they're capable of being NHL players. It's just a matter of that spot opens up and them seizing the opportunity. But like Jim mentioned, a lot of upside to Brendan Smith, the way he played in college, and last year having a really good year at the end of the year in the AHL. But there's some great kids, and then they're not young kids. A few of them, they're 26, 27-year-old kids that are ready to take that next step into the NHL. But like I said, the guys that come to mind are Doug Janik, Logan Pyatt, Brendan Smith, still kind of young. Earhart's another good kid. They should be very strong in Grand Rapids. They should have a great team. Lashoff, another kid who was hurt all year. I keep forgetting about it, but another kid, Lashoff, he had a really good. He played 2 really strong games in the exhibition, so they'll be challenging each other for that top 4 spots down in Grand Rapids, and it's good. It's great competition for them too.
Kenny, any challenges this year going into the regular season, and what are your thoughts about the Central Division?
Well, challenges to make the playoffs. I think that, we talked in training camp the first day. You look at last year's 2nd seed in the West, which was San Jose, to a 10th seed in the West, which was Calgary, was 11 points. We played for 6 months. That's 1 win a month more that San Jose would have gotten than Calgary did in the 10th hole. So I just think that, we made some decisions this summer to put it in perspective. We got about $5.5 million under the cap, and we've done it for, I guess, for a reason. Columbus has $3 million more in players than we do. So teams that we used to have a big financial disparity over, the cap has brought everybody together. So Jimmy and I were just talking this morning. We made some decisions in 2005, coming out of the work stoppage, that we wanted to be less aggressive or more conservative at the trade deadline than we had been. And we're trying to hang on to our draft picks. If possible, we're going to try and trade back in the draft. We traded back, I think, 2 or 3 times. We're trying to rebuild. You need young kids. So some of these, we've had a 20-year run of making the playoffs. That's great news. But it's also, as we head into 10, 11, 12, it's a disadvantage because we haven't had any high picks. We traded picks from 1995 to 2003. We traded 3 firsts to acquire Chelly. Great move. We do that anytime. We traded 2 firsts to acquire Brendan Shanahan. We do it anytime. It was Primo in a first. Shanny helped us do a lot of winning. We traded first as part of a package for Dominic Hasek. We traded first as part of the package for Matthew Schneider, first as part of the package for Robert Lang. So some helped us win championships, some helped us continue to win. But ultimately, you wake up one day and we need to retool, we need to rebuild, we need to hang on to young kids. So 2005, we started to hang on to our draft picks. We did trade a pick to acquire in 07 to acquire Todd Bertuzzi at the trade deadline. We traded a pick in 08 to acquire Brad Stewart at the deadline, but for the most part, we tried to hang on to our picks. And I think, as we saw in training camp, it's what I said to Jimmy today. Like that's 05. This is 2011. That's been 6 years of a philosophical change, and we're finally starting to, because we don't get top 10 picks. When you pick players in the 2nd and 3rd round, we can get into the NHL. We're trying to get into the NHL to help us win. There's a difference between, today on waivers is Brule, who was the 5th pick overall by Columbus. What, about 4 years ago, Jimmy? He's on waivers. maybe 5 years ago when he played in Columbus. He went to Edmonton. He's now on waivers today. It takes a long time for young kids to establish themselves at the National Hockey League levels. And again, you're not trying to get into the league. We're trying to win. You know, you're trying to compete with the San Jose's and the Vancouvers and the Chicagos. So there's a process. You know, kids come onto our team. You know, Abdelkader and Helm, and they're fourth line guys, and they're up and they're down, and now they're getting to be important guys for us. And we're starting with another group behind. You know, Nyquist and Smith and Jan Mersak and Abdelkader and not Emerton, and we're going to figure out if Fabian Brunstrom can be a player. So we're trying to compete with the best teams in the Western Conference. At the same time, we're trying to figure out a way. We don't want to go into a 4-year dip that most teams have to go after. You know, you think about our competition in 2002 and 2003 and 2001, Dallas and Colorado, where they're at today, where we're at. Eventually there's a dip. Nick Lidstrom is going to leave, so we're trying to figure out if it's at all possible to avoid a huge dip that most teams go through. So we're gonna find out, but we're trying to bring along some young kids. We're trying to bring them along slowly. We're trying to hang on to our draft picks. We're trying to be patient with them. We'll see where it goes here over the next couple of years.